Law enforcement in the United States is primarily the responsibility of local police and sheriff's departments, with state police providing broader services. The New York City Police Department, NYPD, is the largest in the country. Federal agencies such as the Federal Bureau of Investigation, FBI, and the U.S. Marshals Service have specialized duties, including protecting civil rights, national security, and enforcing U.S. federal courts' rulings and federal laws. At the federal level, and in almost every state, a legal system operates on a common law. State courts conduct most criminal trials. Federal courts handle certain designated crimes as well as certain appeals from the state criminal courts. Plea bargaining in the United States is very common. The vast majority of criminal cases in the country are settled by plea bargain rather than jury trial. In 2012 there were 4.7 murders per 100,000 persons in the United States, a 54% decline from the modern peak of 10.2 in 1980. In 2001-2, the United States had above-average levels of violent crime and particularly high levels of gun violence compared to other developed nations. A cross-sectional analysis of the World Health Organization mortality database from 2003 showed that United States homicide rates were 6.9 times higher than rates in the other high-income countries, driven by firearm homicide rates that were 19.5 times higher. Gun ownership rights continue to be the subject of contentious political debate. From 1980 through 2008, males represented 77% of homicide victims and 90% of offenders. Blacks committed 52.5% of all homicides during that span, at a rate almost 8 times that of whites. Whites includes most Hispanics, and were victimized at a rate 6 times that of whites. Most homicides were interracial, with 93% of black victims killed by blacks and 84% of white victims killed by whites. In 2012, Louisiana had the highest rate of murder and non-negligent manslaughter in the U.S., and New Hampshire the lowest. The FBI's Uniform Crime Reports estimates that there were 3,246 violent and property crimes per 100,000 residents in 2012, for a total of over 9 million total crimes. Capital punishment is sanctioned in the United States for certain federal and military crimes, and used in 31 states. No executions took place from 1967 to 1977, owing in part to a U.S. Supreme Court ruling striking down arbitrary imposition of the death penalty. In 1976, that court ruled that, under appropriate circumstances, capital punishment may constitutionally be imposed. Since the decision, there have been more than 1,300 executions, a majority of these taking place in 3 states, Texas, Virginia, and Oklahoma. Meanwhile, several states have either abolished or struck down death penalty laws. In 2014, the country had the 5th highest number of executions in the world, following China, Iran, Saudi Arabia, and Iraq. The United States has the highest documented incarceration rate and total prison population in the world. At the start of 2008, more than 2.3 million people were incarcerated, more than 1 in every 100 adults. At year-end 2012, the combined U.S. adult correctional systems supervised about 6,937,600 offenders. About 1 in every 35 adult residents in the United States was under some form of correctional supervision at year-end 2012, the lowest rate observed since 1997. The prison population has quadrupled since 1980. However, the imprisonment rate for all prisoners sentenced to more than a year in state or federal facilities is 478 per 100,000 in 2013, and the rate for pretrial/remand prisoners is 153 per 100,000 residents in 2012. The country's high rate of incarceration is largely due to changes in sentencing guidelines and drug policies. According to the Federal Bureau of Prisons, the majority of inmates held in federal prisons are convicted of drug offenses. The privatization of prisons and prison services, which began in the 1980s, has been a subject of debate. In 2008, Louisiana had the highest incarceration rate, and Maine the lowest.